Oh yeah, we're going old school here. For those of you who are early in their journey in sound design, it's important for you to learn how to create the legendary and classic sounds of dance music. These basic sounds were based on basic synthesis techniques, so learning them will give you a great foundation to then create more complex sounds. So in today's video, I'm going to create some of the classic sounds in rave and jungle using Native Instruments' Komplete Classic Bundle, which includes some of the legendary synths used in the last decade, including Massive and FM8. If you're interested in grabbing these two classic synths, as well as Absynth 5 and Replika, then check out Komplete Classics because they'll give you access to these synths at a great price. Also, if you want some more modern synths, then check out the Future Classics Bundle. And all these can be purchased with a discount at a good price at Plugin Boutique down in the link below. By the way, my name is Stranger, and if you want to improve your music production and sound design, especially with dance music and drum and bass, then this channel is for you. Comment down below and let me know what is your favorite classic VST synth. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right into it. So for this track, I'm working at 140 beats per minute, and I like working at this tempo. It's a very upbeat tempo, and it gives you enough space around the beats to really do some cool drum programming. So I have this basic reggaeton or mumba beat here. And then I did this kind of trap inspired hi-hat pattern. And here it is together. So we're going to be using Komplete Classic to create a track here. And we're going to go for kind of a old school, new school fusion here. So let's start building our track. And the first sound we're going to design is going to be using Massive, featured in the Classics Komplete Bundle. And this has been a legendary synth for the last 10-15 years. A lot of great tracks have been made through those years. And we're going to show you how to do one of the classic REESE sounds. And this is a trick I actually learned from Subfocus in one of his, I think it was computer music tutorials over 10-15 years ago. Simply, he uses a sine wave for oscillator 1 and 2. And just dial the wavetable position all the way counterclockwise so you get the sine wave. And then let's detune the first oscillator by 0.25. So now you're getting that phasing. And then we can detune oscillator to negative 0.25. Notice that the more you detune it, the faster the phasing. So if you want a faster phasing, then adjust the detuning accordingly. The key here is to have a matching polarity. So if you're going 0.4 positive on oscillator 1, then you want to put negative 0.4 on oscillator 2. So this way it preserves the tuning of the key so it doesn't sound off tune. So that's at 0.4. So adjust to your liking. I'm going to keep it down around 0.25 or 0.3. So for each oscillator, there is a wave shaping drop down, and we're going to use format and then bring the intensity down. Essentially what we want to do is add some audible harmonics to that sine wave. Alright, so now it's starting to sound like that old school REESE. Now if we want a little more dirtiness to this bass, we can go into the effects here. We can add one of the tube distortions or saturators. So I like classic tube. Just adjust the dry, wet, and drive accordingly. So the more drive gives you that more angry REESE sound. Now another trick that Subfocus does in his tutorial is that he employs a third oscillator for the main sub bass, and he filters the sub from oscillator 1 and 2, because what he wants to do is he doesn't want any phasing in the sub bass. He simply wants oscillator 1 and 2 to create those midtones, and he wants the sub bass to be constant. And this is more of a new school technique. There's actually nothing wrong if you have the sub bass phasing. I like the old school method, kind of makes the sub bass kind of pulse, right? But if you want a more constant sub bass, then what you can do is send oscillator 1 and 2 to filter 1, and then set filter 1 to a high pass, and then we can filter the bottom end from oscillator 1 and 2. Right? So now there's no sub bass. The trick here is using these faders here and moving oscillator 1 and 2 all the way up to filter 1, and then oscillator 3 will be all the way down to filter 2, and then filter 2 will just be, we can just keep it as low pass and bring the cutoff all the way up. And then just make sure in filter 2 the volume is all the way up with this fader. And then there's a fader here to mix filter 1 and 2 together, and just make sure this is in the center. Now oscillator 3 is currently set to square wave, and we don't want that, so go choose a sine wave. And this way you can distort the oscillator 1 and 2 even further without affecting the sub bass. So if you want a more new school sound, then try that method. I actually prefer the more old school sound without oscillator 3, so I'm going to stick with that. All right, once we're happy with the sound, let's put in some notes. So I'm going to go for that old school angry Reese vibe. So I like the notes that we had earlier with the F, C, and B. So I'm going to just use those notes. We may want to duplicate it and add some variation at the end. For example, add a different note here. Sometimes having a little pause here would be nice too. Gives it some breath. All right, I'm liking that. Let's call this Reese high, and then we're gonna make a copy. I'm gonna call this low and move it 1 octave down. Okay, that's sounding rude. Let's keep going. So another popular synth in the Komplete Classics collection is the FM8 synth, and this is, as the title says, an FM synth. And actually this is a synth that I used a lot over the last couple years. FM was something that I learned not too long ago relatively, and it's been a process that has been instrumental in my music production. So I definitely encourage you guys to learn FM synthesis. It's a bit tricky at first, but it's really all about learning the basics of FM synthesis. Once you get that down, you can then build on that knowledge to create more complex FM design. So we're gonna create a classic donk bass with FM8. Sometimes the donk bass is made with a filtered square bass. So I'm gonna show you how we can also do this with FM, and it's actually a fun way to do it. So the way this works in FM is you have a carrier oscillator, which is the one that makes the audible signal, which is oscillator F. You also have other oscillators, A, B, C, D, E. Oscillator X is a noise generator, and then Z is a filter. So the other oscillators modulate the carrier and change the harmonics. So first, enable oscillator E. And then in this little box here that connects E to F, you can increase the amount that oscillator E modulates F. So click and drag up. As you can see, the value goes up, and that arrow is showing that E is modulating F. Common thing to do is changing the pitch of your modulator. So clicking on oscillator E, you can change the pitch. Now they work by ratio, so changing it up to 2 would make it an octave higher. And And you can move it further up to get other harmonics. Let's go back to number 2. So we can use this envelope to change the amplitude envelope of oscillator E, and then we can create some interesting articulation. So if we bring this down, you're going to create a decay to oscillator E, and this changes the modulation amount. So short decay will give you that donk bass sound. You can zoom in and change the slope. Maybe you want a longer decay. Play it an octave down. Now if we change the modulation amount in the matrix, we could increase the timbre of the sound. Let's see what happens when we increase the ratio. So that's more donkey now, depending on how much timbre you want. Just remember that things tend to sound sweeter when you're moving up octaves. So 2 would be an octave. To move it another octave, it would be double that, so it would be 4. And then 8. That's not the same that you shouldn't try the other values. You will get some interesting results, so I do encourage you guys to experiment. So you get that screechy sound. Let's keep it at 2 for now. And I'm going to save this envelope. I'll just call it donk and save it in the corner here. What you can do is you can apply additional modulations. Let's enable oscillator D, increase the amount. And we can load the same envelope for D. Okay, increase the ratio. Remember to also experiment with the other shapes. So we have a variety of different shapes you can try for each oscillator. Let's go back to oscillator E and change the shape just to hear it. So changing the shape of your modulator will give you interesting results. Also try changing the shape of the carrier. You may want to decrease the modulation amount. Now that's getting a bit gritty. And that sounds more pleasant now. Oh, that's donkey, old school bassy. I do like the sine wave. I just like the rounder sound. So I'm going to stick with the sine wave. Now going into the effects, you have a number of different effects. You can add some drive to it. Makes it a bit warmer. Cabinet is nice. Add some stereo dimension to it. Now under Easy Morph, there's some awesome parameters here to take your sound to another level. They're just easy ways to add more timbre, for example. Old school goodness. Okay, let's create a melody with this sound. So I'm going to just take the pattern we had from the Reese and then just make it a more stabby pattern using dotted eighths. And we can just copy it through like that. All right, old school vibes. The next synth in the collection is Absynth 5, another classic. Now this is a synth that I haven't explored too much, but what I know is it's a great synth for creating lush pad sounds. And there's a great library of presets that you can just use as is. Some really cool old school sounding pads. That's a nice one. So we can put that down, maybe use that as an intro. And we're just going to program in a minor ninth. We can do it old school style where we change keys like that just by copying. Oh yeah, I can already feel the nostalgia. All right, let's use Absynth for some stab melodies. So I have this little patch here on Absynth, and we're gonna use the FM bass pattern. And just move it a few octaves up, and then just build a minor triad. Oh yeah, we're going old school here. So for some added flavor, I found this old school vocal sample. If you guys know Reinforced Records, then you must know this sample. And what I did to it is I added shaper box, added volume shaper to create kind of that gated sound. All right, I think the next thing we got to do is add a breakbeat. So let's work on that next. So the breakbeat I'm feeling for this vibe is the hot pants break, and here's the original sequence. And let's just duplicate this and change this around. I'm going to move this snare over here, and then remove this kick and move this over here. So now we have this. All right, let's add some processing to the hot pants break. So I have G clip here. This is a free clipper, great tool to clip your signal and make it sound banging. What it does, it kind of brick walls all those peaks to give it that loud sound. And then I added Samplex, which is another favorite of mine. This makes it sound old school, like it's coming off a sampler from the 90s. And then I just added a bit of EQing. So now that we have the breakbeat and a bunch of different parts, we can just mix and match and see what sounds good. So let's hear it with the bass. All right, that's sounding nasty. Let's add one more sound. So one more plugin to show you in the Komplete Classics Bundle. This Replika effect adds some nice delay and pad effects to your sound. So here's that stab that we had from Absynth. So if we turn on Replika, it can convert this into a pad sound. So we can use this as another layer in the track as the track progresses. This effect just adds a nice option to your sound design possibilities. We can also play with some of the parameters and show you how this beast behaves. It's actually got some great delays as well. So if you're looking for a good delay, this is a good place to go. All right, so now that we have a bunch of layers, let's put this into a quick sequence. All right, so here's a quick sequence I made with the parts where we have a bit of an intro here, and we drop into the REESE with the breakbeat, and then we switch between the Donk Bass and the REESE, and then we introduce the stabs every other phrase. So let's hear the track in full. right, we have some rough breakbeat business going out to all the old school ravers. This one's for you. All right, so I hope you enjoyed watching me recreate some of the old school sounds in dance music and then using them in a more modern context. For all the beginners out there, make sure you get all the basics down, because once you've learned them, you'll be on your way to creating some more complex sounds. If you guys are interested in getting complete classics or feature classics, make sure you check it out in the link below. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Anyways, that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next video.